And I think recruiting at every level, if you can't recruit, you can't win. You have to learn how to recruit.
I will not go below 30 unless the player's an absolute stud as far as work ethic.
We'll congratulate each other and chug some beers if somebody wins a national championship.
If they did, don't you think I'd have 2 championships by now? I might have 3.
Now, I know Cash uses those booster gifts. He's always promising cash and women, right?
I've only been caught twice. That's it.
Oh, Cass, he's only been caught twice that we know of, or that he'll admit. Welcome everybody to another episode of This, That, and the Other. And I know it's been probably a month, or at least, or close to it, since the last show. And we've got a lot of catching up to do. First and foremost, I want to make sure that everybody can hear me okay. And as you can see, Adam's joined us in the studio, so he can hear me. So if you can't hear me, you need to turn up your laptop or your TV or something. Everything's going good. We've got everything up and running. Wasn't quite sure if it was all going to work after such a long layoff, but hey, it's electronics, it's fundamentals, it's up and kicking. So we're good to go. Everybody have a good New Year, I hope. Had a Merry Christmas. It's been that long. And, everybody had their vacation time and had a chance to relax a little bit. But two people that didn't relax, apparently, were Adam and Chris. As many of you are aware, today on the 14th was a rollout of an update across the What If Sports platform, and specifically a couple items that we're going to talk about tonight on the Gridiron Dynasty portion of it. So without further ado, Adam's here to tell us a little bit about that. Welcome, Adam.
Hey, how you doing, Magic? Thanks for having me on again.
Anytime.
It was kind of a wild day. I actually asked him if I could have a beer on stream today. So cheers to you guys. Awesome day. I think most of the things rolled out pretty seamlessly. We had a few things we had to go back and touch up today, just on a couple of things. It wasn't on the Gridiron side, but overall, I felt like this is the kind of thing we're going to probably start trying to do. And it's one of the things we tried to talk about the last time we were on here, is kind of these monthly cadences, a little bit more like the last patch on the 18th of December. And now we're giving another one for now January. So I would envision some stuff like this on a monthly basis. This one's probably a little bit bigger than they'll probably be, because we weren't working on our bigger projects kind of in the front round of it. For Gridiron specifically, this was kind of a lot of stuff that you guys had talked about from like a mass recruiting standpoint, that we add basically the ability to add any recruiting action from that page. And it was missing kind of starting a freshman, starting a sophomore, and then promising snaps. So that was one of the things that I think that you guys had voiced would be a lot easier if you could do this all from one page. And so we tried to make it happen. It had to go through a couple iterations in quality in QA that I had to test out because some of the things weren't sticking, but we ended up getting it done. If you guys do end up seeing issues with it, please let us know. Like I said, I'm still a very new Gridiron player, so I try to go through any situation that I can and try and use test cases the way I can to fill any situation. So if there's things that, need to be adjusted, just let us know, open a customer support ticket, or you can, harass me directly. I'm okay either way with that. The next piece of it, and I can go through a list of this if you want to discuss them, or
well, I've got some actually that we can look at. Let's go ahead with kind of the order that you had earlier. And this was one of the first ones, is you can add promises to recruit summary page. This includes the freshman and sophomore, as well as the percentage of playing time, which we all know had to be done on the actual recruit page. It couldn't be done in mass, kind of like the OYATSR tool allowed. So you guys have added that. I have not had a chance to try it out yet, but hey, that's a big one right there. I know a lot of guys appreciate it.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the way the guys recruit is they give a lot of promises, the way it seems. So if they have a certain step or formula they do to open recruiting, they can kind of just do that with all of their recruits. Like if their whole thing is to schedule their scouting trip and then, dump a promise and then dump, another promise on it too. Like I think it's going to help people. Hopefully it helps you guys recruit faster and more efficiently. That's really the goal of it. So that's kind of where I come from on it. So.
And one of the other ones that you had, let's get a look at it, was increasing the number of positional changes, default to 8 for all teams, Customer service, i.e. Chris and you, will no longer be doing the positional change requests. And now the big thing that you and I had talked about several weeks ago was that positional changes occurring at the end of the season, right, wrong, or indifferent, that could pose some problems. So I'm actually glad to see you guys capped it at the 5th regular season game.
Yeah, and I think part of it, we were trying to find an area where it would allow some nuance for some skill to still succeed. So if you have found a certain hole or a certain way to recruit that you can transition players into other roles, we wanted to reward that. The number 8 was one that we settled on because it seemed like most people don't use it, but there were some people that were asking for 3 to anywhere from 10 additional positional changes. And I don't know if they were trying to test things out, but the ratings hits you get for positional changes, I don't know why you'd need 15, but it seems like it's a pretty if you have a strategy, what you're doing, like, more credit to you. This one, more or less, I couldn't fix this stuff. Like, this is something that would take away from Chris's time. So for me, this change was to try and get the number to a number that would meet probably 95 to 98% of the people's needs. And then also not have to have then Chris go in and have to take time away from him developing new stuff or cool stuff, and try and find a middle ground for it. And then the 5th regular season game was kind of the thing that went along with it, was that, like, I think you guys used to have unlimited position changes. I think as someone told me. Yeah. And people would tank out their teams. And so this kind of became like one of those things that, like, if you wanted to, make your changes up until the 5th regular season game, it's going to give you the ability to do so. So if you're trying to decide if you're going to play someone somewhere, how you want to manage your team, I think that it's one of those things that, like, now it'll end up being more straightforward as you get towards the end of the year. That you're not going to get a surprise, on someone's depth chart, or a surprise late change, or someone just taking their top 8 players and ruining them for the following season. So,
yeah, and I could see moving out that 5th game to maybe the 8th or 9th if injuries were coming back, because you could have 3 tight ends on the roster and 2 of them go down, and now you need to, depending on your needs, either an O lineman or a wide receiver. So we're just I speak for a lot of people, I'm sure, when I say we're just glad to see you guys actually rolling some of these things out, and it's not a lot of empty promises, which is a blessing in of itself. Let's go ahead and talk about the last one that you had on your list today, and that was the job selection process. I know this one has been a real sticking point with a couple coaches, simply because of the appearance that it's unfair in some regards to those coaches who have decent resumes versus the coaches that don't. And then you look at their resumes and you see that they've played one human coach in, the regular season for the last 5 years. And that kind of gives them an uneven heads up in a job application because of their record. Whereas had they been playing human coaches, they may not have been that good. Go ahead and tell us a bit about the background on that decision.
So, and this kind of parlays into something a little bit later. This current world is not necessarily meant to be the final state of what we want job selection and jobs to look like. This was one of the things that we did to help encourage, get people into new worlds, or help new coaches get to the teams that they wanted to. I don't want to necessarily, not keep the veteran coaches in mind. We did nothing to the logic around if you could apply for a job against another human. That hasn't changed. The only thing that's changed is that you might have more competition for jobs because people with not as strong of resumes might qualify to apply for those jobs. But say someone of my ability who I've now started my first full season of Division II. Kudos to me. If I apply for the same Division II job as you, Magic, I'm not going to get the job over you. I don't have
seen my record lately.
I honestly, based on what I know about the formula, I don't think it's going to matter. But it boils down to a couple different formulas. And when I went in to look at it, the formulas are so complex, and we basically tried to go backwards through it and figure out if there were areas we could do to tweak and make them, more accommodating or make things work a little bit better. And the truth of the matter is that we ended up adjusting actually the coaching requirements for the schools rather than actually adjusting the formulas. So it's not that we didn't want to, adjust how the game grants, success or grants that, but, we didn't going in and adjusting something that, the past team worked really hard to make this environment. I didn't feel safe doing it. And I'd rather just have it not impact jobs that you were competing for and rather just help new coaches and current coaches that want to join another world. I wish that I could have gotten rid of the have to play in D3 for one season, but that would have added a whole new set of issues that I didn't necessarily want to tackle with this one. But technically, if you do have a very, very good first season in D3, you should be able to qualify, I think, very closely for a bottom level Division I AA if you have a very, very good season. But you would need an exemplary season, probably national championship would be my guess, just because of how the game calculates experience and success. So the thing still is that the best way to get experience and success is to go up to the next level as fast as possible. I know people ask, can you go to can you go, from Division, 2 all the way up to Division 1A and skip Division 1 AA? In this new system, it's possible. It's still going to take a little bit of time. The fastest way still to get to the top division is to win as much as possible and climb as quickly as you can. So if you have the opportunity to go to Division 2, you go to Division 2, take the best school possible and try and win as many games as possible. The minute you have the ability to go to Division 1 AA, you find the opportunity, you go there and try and win as many games as possible. And that's just how the game was built out. I'm not sure that if we go back and like I said, this is the short-term solution to kind of get users to the place they want to be. The long-term solution isn't going to necessarily be that way. The long-term solution comes a little bit more where you start looking at different jobs, and success, I think, is going to equal actual success, and experience is going to equal, essentially like games coached, essentially, which isn't necessarily the case right now. I think they're both pretty much tied pretty heavily to winning. And it's not that I think there's anything wrong with that, but it doesn't necessarily just determine the difference between a top 25 win or a, beating, like you said, beating up on a bunch of Sims.
Now, what about within a division, specifically at D1? You have the essentially 3 tiers. You've got your mid-majors, your majors, and then your elites. So as far as coaching selection process within that division, has there been any tinkering that we can see with that?
You won't see any tinkering there, and I think most of the elite jobs are going to be contested anyway. So you're going to see probably senior coaches still maintain those roles. Okay. I'm hoping the change results in more of our Big Six conferences, or Big Six, Big Five, however you want to look at football, being full. I'd like to see a world where we have full major conferences and people want to, clash with each other, because I think it's a lot more fun when the games are full and you're playing users.
Sure.
And you can't force anyone to. Everyone kind of plays the game a little bit differently. Some people like being an outlier and, not playing difficult schedules and trying to get it on, trying to get a good bowl and then playing one tough game. I mean, you can't necessarily force people to play the way you want to, but I personally feel the game is more fun when you're playing against other people.
Now, what about the question that I know Daryl J. Hunter's always talked about, which is the guy who's lurking in the wings. He's run his team up, his elite or his school that's even though not elite, they've had tremendous success. So now he quits coaching. He's got a tremendous resume, but he's been idle for 3, 4, 5 seasons, and he's just sitting back waiting for prey that his school of choice opens up, and he jumps on it out of the blue and surprises everybody. And you may recall that conversation. If not,
I do recall that conversation, and this fix didn't touch that.
Okay. Sorry, Daryl.
No, and I'm sorry too. It's not that we don't want to. It's just that this fix was really supposed to just be for more of the people starting new worlds that want to climb up, and it really didn't address some of the issues that come with how the current system was implemented and experienced coaches coming back to, with resumes and that kind of stuff too. Like I said, the next iteration of this, which is our long-term solution, was to kind of attack some of the other things like that, where if you're gone, maybe your record falls off a little bit.
Right.
It's interesting because then you run into situations where if we're trying to make these games also real life as well, some of these coaches that take breaks then become almost more scarce and more sought after when they take these, sabbaticals. You look, John Gruden, who went to the booth for a while. I mean, there's still rumors that Bill Cowher is going to come back and coach. I mean, you think about Urban Meyer going to Jacksonville today. So it's just, it's those things that you try to make it fair, but it's also it's that delicate line between realistic and fair as well. So, and obviously these coaches that are lurking in the wings are, had success. And so it's hard to kind of say, hey, you don't deserve you don't have deserve a shot. But, we also, understand that if people are working and actively coaching and trying to build their own resumes, that there should be room in the sim engine where if you're a young upstart coach with a lot of success, potentially your resume is looked at differently. And that's kind of where I want to go with it, is I almost think it should be this balancing act between success and experience, because you can have a whole lot of experience and it's just mediocre. And, that necessarily shouldn't win over, someone that's had, 10 years of really elite experience, but the other person has 30 years of experience and it's, mediocre to above average. So that's, and I'm not trying to say the young and up and comer should always get the job. I think that there should be, some variance in terms of maybe what the schools are looking for, or, not have it be the same formula no matter who applies for the job. Potentially there's different criteria based on positions. Potentially it's different criteria, we build out, potentially in the next world, next iteration of this, maybe we build out, 7 or 8 different criteria profiles. And, for that job opening that time, it selects one of those criteria and it might be different. And then that also might keep people from trying to calculate and figure out, what the system actually looks like. 'Cause you're not going to get a consistent picture of it being the same thing over and over and over. So.
Yeah, definitely looking forward to some of the movements coming with the different aspects of coaching, especially. Before we go into what you guys have on the horizon or your plans, I did pull off one that seemed to have a lot of traction on the forums, and that's from CatsFang88. And as you can see, he suggests a rework of the vision process, or like we were just talking about, the D1A keeping a job, so that playing or losing to a human is more valuable than playing to sim AI. That dovetails right into what we were just talking about, but he adds the aspect of vision. That vision is so important in who you can recruit. Talk to the audience about that a little bit.
So the first thing I'm going to say is, do not take this next statement as gospel or anything. This does not have anything to do with what design you're doing, but I personally am not a big fan of vision. I think it's kind of it's a rich get richer scheme, and also it's there's no way in the world that you don't know who these recruits are. So if you have a top tier Division 1 or Division 1A recruit that's just down the street and he just happens to be out of your vision, there's no way you're not going to know who that player is. So I struggle a little bit with the vision argument altogether. I also struggle with Hoops Dynasty's recruiting system, because there's no way you don't know who recruits are. There's no way that you have to send recruits all over the world and the nation to understand who these players are. I mean, there's so many scouting systems and scouting things going on anymore that by the time you get your scouting report on these players, you already know how good they are. We're not in the old age where you have to figure out hop on the phone or catch a bus across the nation to watch a kid play. There's so much tape and so much digital age stuff going on with these top recruits that it's it's a different world when you're in the lower divisions. But when you're talking about Division 1, Division 1 AA, they all know who the players are. I mean, they recruit these kids from like age 14. So it's like, how do you build this out, like in a sense that like is one, realistic, but also two, like rewards people for playing, tough schedules, rewards people for being good, but also doesn't necessarily keep the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer. So like, I think that there definitely needs to be some adjustment to answer the original question. I think there has to be some adjustment to playing humans versus playing Sims. And maybe that's reworked through like the WIS rankings, because like typically humans are sitting higher on the WIS rankings than, I guess, like the Sims are. And there's some, some people that know how to schedule the best Sims and know how to like build that schedule up. But I think that's part of making a good schedule also. Like you have to learn kind of what those tendencies are. And there's no guarantee that Sim's going to run up against everyone else and win either. So to answer your question, I think yes, that there needs to be some determining factor between playing a user and playing Sims. In regards to vision, if it's an aspect of prestige, then I think that's going to come along with it. But I do think that like the concept of vision as a whole, I think is somewhat flawed. But I also understand that it's the world that Gridiron's been in for a very long period of time, so it's hard to envision it without having it. I mean, personal example for me is that the team I just took over the school I played Division II tennis for in South Dakota, I started recruiting, and I got 2 very friendly messages from Division III coaches that were basically like, hey, you're not going to be able to win recruiting the kinds of players you're recruiting. And essentially I had probably dipped a tad low in terms of that, but I am also still learning how to assess players and, how much players are going to go up depending on their work ethic and their potential as well. So it's not, I'm not trying, and part of it is that this team is not very good. I mean, I probably have pretty bad division if I'm, looking down and competing with the top D3 schools. And it's, right. I also understand that from their perspective, I'm probably poo-pooing on their recruiting class a little bit, which, I understand that feels a little bad. And I'm sorry if you're one of those people. But, I'm still trying to figure this game out too. So I'm not saying that any of this is in my plans, but it's also, like when you're trying to think about scouting as a whole, one of the things I do love about Gridiron is that you do have access to every single player. Like you're not sitting there saying, well, I haven't sent my scouts over to, my schools in Georgia, and I haven't sent my schools over to Mississippi, so I have no knowledge over the players in Mississippi. I'm not a fan of that either. So, I hope no one's hearing me say the thing I'm most scared of saying, just based on the things that have been said in the forums and when I respond to anything, is please do not think that I'm just going to uplift Hoops Dynasty recruiting into Gridiron. Just know that is not the plan. I don't have any intention of doing that. So I just have to make that absolutely clear when I talk about this, that we're not, going to just throw the Hoops Dynasty recruiting into Gridiron. Because I know that like anytime we start talking about recruiting, it's like, this is the best part of the game. Don't make it like Hoops Dynasty, I'll quit. Like, just know, like, I have no plans of making it like Hoops Dynasty recruiting. There's plenty of flaws in Hoops Dynasty recruiting that I'm trying to like figure out how we're going to fix that too, because Division III schools nab, the number 36 point guard in the nation, which also is a problem in its own. So, just trust me on that, I guess I'm saying. So,
well, before we get going on to what the future holds, we've got 2 guys who have tuned in, Caddy and Holdaway. Cool. I'd like to go ahead and bring those on and let them throw a couple questions at you and see if they can pull out some secrets that you may be hiding from us. Let's get Shannon on. And I don't know if Caddy has video or not, but his audio may work, so we'll add him as well. So there's Shannon, otherwise known as Holdaway. Welcome to the show, brother.
How's
it going?
How are you guys?
Hey, Caddy, how are you?
Yeah, I'm doing well. It's been a busy day, but it's been a good day. So,
well, hey, listen, thanks for the updates. I personally really appreciate that, and I appreciate the transparency. I can't say enough how nice it is to see some changes. I think for those of us that have been around for a while, we know there's been some changes and different things that's happened over time, and we kind of get excited about the opportunities that may come forward. But I just appreciate every small change is nice from my perspective. Whether I agree with them or not, I like the fact that they're a little bit different. So I like it. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'll be honest with you. Like it's tough because I didn't even realize it when we did this today. Like I actually left out one of our games, and they didn't get any changes today. They were the only ones that didn't. And they got the update on their conference, on their boards and their chats, and it said hey, multi-game update, and they log in and don't see anything. And it's hard because you're serving 8 different games and trying to figure out how you can please 8 different consumers and 8 different sets of consumers. And then within each one of those groups, you're talking about, everyone has different priorities within the two. And there's even disagreement between the groups and the games on what's the best course for the game. So it's, you can go into the Gridiron, the Hoops Dynasty, and everyone has a different idea of what would be the best thing going forward for all these games. So it's one of those things that we're trying our best to trying to have something for everybody in every patch, but in this one I didn't even realize it when we put it in, and it was even like some of the small changes, like for Sim League hockey and for Sim League football, we just updated some stadiums and put some new stadiums in, and it wasn't anything gameplay related, but the fact that the Las Vegas Golden Knights Stadium hadn't been in Sim League hockey, and I think they've been playing there for like 3 or 4 years now at this point. They've gone to a Stanley Cup, and you couldn't choose their arena. It just seemed like it was a little bit sad, I guess.
Right.
I'm actually
it would be sad to see that, right? If on the opposite, I feel where they're coming from. Well, I've got just 2 questions. If I can get my 2 questions in, then I'll disappear back into the lurker stage.
Go for it, man.
You got my PayPal account, right?
Yeah, exactly. Hey, check's on the way. So how do we get the gear, man? I mean, we used to could get gear. I see you wearing gear.
Yeah,
it's so funny you say that. Like,
I was gonna ask.
It's so funny you say that because, like, I'm wearing this today because Sable actually shipped me. It looks like about 40 shirts, and they're out now sitting at my place. And obviously, I grabbed one because I got to be a company man. But
That's right.
I'm actually I don't have a whole ton of them. I have maybe a handful of these What If Sports shirts. I have probably a dozen Hoops Dynasty, and then I have probably about 20 Hardball Dynasty. And so what I'm looking at doing is I have a pretty good close friend that runs a t-shirt business. So I'm starting to work with him on getting quotes. I have a blessing from my boss, the CFO of Sports Hub, to start looking and getting quotes for that kind of stuff again. So one of the things we're looking at doing is what that strategy is going to look like. I think that we'll probably go back to having a set shirt for kind of each set of games. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I'm thinking about doing is that maybe every year we take a yearly order for the champions for each one of the games, and I make a championship shirt every year where you can order the shirt, and on the back of the shirt, on the front of the shirt will probably have like Hoops Dynasty or Gridiron Dynasty, and the back of the shirt will have how many championships everyone won that year from that group. So like you can kind of like, it's one of the things I haven't been married to this idea, but it's one that like spoke to me in terms of like, if there's a yearly shirt that's like, hey, it's the Gridiron this year shirt, it's the Hoops Dynasty this year shirt, that we just do kind of a year release, and then we just kind of keep some basic gear on the store that like you can either use reward center points or you can just flat out buy if you want to. And I think that when you start talking about other sources of revenue to help fund, I talk about fund another developer. That's my one thing that I've been talking to a lot about with my leadership is, what do my metrics have to look like to get another Chris on the staff, or even a junior guy that can help, do some of this, do like basically the patches that we did today, and then let Chris basically just knock out every single kind of update that we need to do, or major overhaul or rewrite or anything that we need to do, and just basically let him be 100% dedicated to that. Because, he probably spends about a third of his time helping with customer support tickets, and then he probably spends 2/3 of his time doing actual development. So it's I'm trying to get more to 80-20. That's kind of the goal, but we're still learning. It's I think a month and a half, 2 months for us now at this point. So I'm hoping it gets better, and that's kind of the reason why we're trying to put some changes in that will kind of reduce some of the development tickets that Chris has to work on. So,
well, I think that's exciting. The only caveat I would add to that is you have a few coaches like Mike Myers that would need a quilt or a blanket to put all of their championships in one year.
A damn parachute.
Yeah.
Magic would probably need like a flag size, right? So
No. I would need an ant hanky. You want them little ones.
No, it's one of those things. Like, it might just say like Myers, times like 8 or whatever if he wins a championship.
Yeah.
And so like and list them in order of how many you won for the year. Like I think like it's one of those things that like you can kind of wear around or just have it for the sake of having it. Whether you don't want to spend money on it, you can use your reward center points for it.
There you go. I like it.
You can make it the Champions Club.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, also if like people want to buy the yearly shirt, they certainly can, and they'll kind of have it. And I know there's a lot of people that care a lot about this game, so that's kind of the direction we're going with it. What was your second question, Holloway?
So my second question is and I don't want to get into a rabbit hole here, but from a vision perspective, I hear everything you're saying, and I don't have any arguments with anything that you've said. I know that there's no perfect answer, but even at the lower levels, D2, for example, D1 AA, even, there are some teams that have that ability to get some talent that maybe should have went to the higher levels. And so that overlap to me is what the tricky part is going to be, is how do you take that into account, and how do you figure that system out? And it's about winning, it's about atmosphere, it's about fan support, it's about all those things in real life, but how much of that's transferable, just like the coach thing that you were talking about. Some of that coach thing is hard to transfer into a game. It's just hard to do. It's hard to do.
And I think part of it also boils down a little bit too, and it's not a popular answer. Our Sims are terrible at recruiting. I mean, it's just flat out no other way to talk about it. I mean, you pretty much can bully just about any sim you really want to bully. And so when you start talking about the crossover might not be, when we rewrite or when we do these things, the crossover might not be as big because the Sims know how to recruit better in the future. And it's not fun to lose to the Sim, but it also, I think, is more indicative of not having these outlier schools that have, players that are 10%, 20% more talented than everyone else. And it's honestly one of the biggest problems with Hoops Dynasty is that the spirit of it was good, and I've talked about this before, but it was made so that the worlds would be 70-80% full, and that everyone was going to keep each other checked in, and that the people that trickled through were kind of going to be those one-off gems, and you weren't going to have 4 or 5 of them on your team every single year. And so I mean, that's one of the things that you have to, and it's not a fun experience to, lose to Sims, but I also think that if you're a Division II school going against a Division I AA, you shouldn't be able to just steamroll them either. You shouldn't be able to just get the recruits that you want. So that's one of the things that I'm trying to tackle in both games when, we look at recruiting is, and both games have completely different recruiting systems. If you want to recruit in, division, if you want to recruit in your team in Gridiron, you can sell the farm for that recruit if you want them. You don't necessarily have as much of that ability. You have some of that ability in Hoops just because they put some caps on home visits and that kind of stuff as well. So I'm not saying one's better or one's right. It's just that, trying to figure out what that delicate balance is and how do you make it fun so that, if you do end up being in an area of the country where people slip through or recruits slip through, that you can benefit off that. But also, if the worlds are full, that you might be relegated to being in the same talent pool as everybody else. And then it's going to depend on who the best coach is, not who can get the best recruits, because we even see that in some of the regular NCAAs that, you talk about some of these University of Michigan classes being, top 3, top 5 classes. And then you look at the season that University of Michigan had this year, and I'm not picking on Michigan. Go ahead. It's okay. It's okay. All right. I know that it's a safe bet to know that probably a lot of people from this game are from Cincinnati. So if I pick on Michigan, it's usually safe. That's one of the things for me is I think recruiting can be one aspect of it, but then also I feel like there needs to be some semblance of it where if you know what you're doing, you know how to coach, maybe that recruiting difference isn't going to save you every single time. So it's not, and like you said, it's a delicate balance, and it's one of the things that we're trying to, wow, that's a tough name you put there for him.
Oh,
I just caught that.
Thank you. Well, Magic almost won today in the
Oh my gosh!
championship
Don't
game.
remind me.
Keyword almost. So now
Don't
he's been
remind me.
on campus.
Was Magic playing horseshoes or hand grenades when he almost won?
Yeah, well, he was playing Big Papa, which is kind of like taking on like a Herculean god of some kind as
Gotcha.
the neighborhood fairy. So who knows? But he got close.
And I had the lead with a few minutes to go. And of course, my winning offense in my game plan settings that I preach about so heavily on this show, I did not go check, and I left it at the regular setting, which was the pass in the first half. And so my guy, of course, threw an interception. He scored. I lost. End of story. Pissed me off. Yes, it did.
You were close.
Well, anyway, it was.
Really close.
It was.
All
and we'll
right, so
talk about that here in a little bit.
I'm going to exit stage left again. Thank you so much for the transparency. It's so nice to get updates and hear things and see progress, and really genuinely appreciate it and look forward to talking to you again. Thanks, Magic.
Thank you. Thanks for hopping on.
Brother. I almost wore my VT hat, but I got the hogs in my backyard. So love you, mean it. Stick around. We're gonna go head over to Caddy, who's also joined us. Had some Walmart grocery deliveries or something going on there for a minute.
Yeah, something like that. Well, kinda. So I'm Caddy, I guess. I'm kind
nice to meet you. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, you too. I'm a newer player, I think, and as you can probably tell, than some of the.
Wait a minute. I hear an accent.
Yeah, I'm from Sydney, Australia.
Wow,
nice.
awesome. An Aussie.
Yeah.
Love it. Go ahead.
I don't know how many international players there are on Gridiron Dynasty, but I can't imagine there's too many in Australia. But yeah, we're here. So I guess I have like one question, which kind of ties into me being in such a terrible time zone for this game. But it's tied to recruiting and the time periods that happen. So just for reference, the very first recruiting period, which is very important, I find, starts at 4 a.m. for me. So
yes.
It's pretty brutal. So I was just wondering if there's, plans for it to be changed.
So good question. No, I think it's a good question. I think it's interesting. I never would have anticipated a Sydney player. I come from a gaming, thing that, where we had a worldwide player base, but it's one of those things where I struggle a little bit with the recruiting in Gridiron too, because I also play the basketball game Hoops Dynasty. It's actually where I've played the majority of my time. I'm a fairly new Gridiron player myself. I joined the company about 2 months ago, and so I've been trying to drink the fire hose and learn Gridiron myself. And one of the things they did in one of the things, and this is, a disclaimer again, I'm not saying I'm moving to Hoops Dynasty recruiting, but you guys recruit every 3 hours, I think, in Gridiron, and it is miserable. The fact that you can't go an entire night of sleep, if you want to sleep more than 6 hours, you're going to miss a session. I think that the times were originally set by the original team being on Eastern time. I would say that they're probably, I don't have plans to change them anytime in the near future, just because adjusting the times right now is tough. I'm looking at trying to do things to shorten seasons, and kind of the way they coded the game the past team did is it's very statuesque and monolithic in the sense that we really can't change things very easily. And it's why we've stuck with some of these smaller changes for some of our things. Because I think there's some ideas here, I'd love to shorten recruiting by 2 days, but chopping out 2 whole days of a season, it's really, really hard to take out what the game processes and how it does its timings and stuff. So for us to adjust the time zones, I'm in Pacific time, no, Mountain time. I'm in Arizona where we don't do daylight savings, but half the year I'm in one time zone and half the year I'm in another time zone. But it's hard for me too, because I think some of the times with it kicks off, I think it kicks off in midday and it's morning for me too. So it's I'm trying to think of my time zone compared to you. So it starts at 4 a.m. for you?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
12.
Do we have Magic, maybe you can answer this for me. Do you have a 12-hour, is there a 24-hour dead zone where you can set your first recruiting action?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, the initial recruiting action.
That's probably the thing. That might save you a little bit, but then that means you have to still be up by 7 a.m.
Yeah.
Which is still decently early, but I don't necessarily have a solution for you. I know that in Hoops Dynasty they do every 6 hours, which I think is a little bit more
that's
reasonable because you can sleep for 11 hours and 59 minutes if you wanted to. But I don't sleep that much. But
and we do have players over in like Egypt and other parts of Europe. Quite a few from the England area. I think we've even got some from up in Scandinavia. Now, of course, we've got some Canucks that play as well. So, but they're, similar with us for time zones. But in the past, there was Thailand represented, Hawaii, of course. So definitely there's a global reach. And no matter how you slice it or dice it, somebody somewhere is going to be inconvenienced. And I know when I had this conversation with, I guess it was Jay Conte way back when, he said the sad part of a game like this is when you're talking about the recruiting aspect and the time and the convenience, because it is a real time right now game, somebody's going to miss out on a convenience of a recruiting schedule or a convenience of a game plan schedule. So you have to target your mass audience to have the most convenience. Unfortunately, that was the business decision that he broke. Believe me, you're not alone because simply put, there are guys here in the United States and gals, who work night shift. And so what's normal to the 9-to-5er is abnormal to them. So they're inconvenienced because of the schedules as well. So, yeah, when it comes to that, I don't envy Adam or Chris in the least at all.
Yeah, and I think it's one of the things that, there used to be a tool, 5-6 years back, Majique, where it was called the Answers tool, and it actually allowed you to schedule recruiting actions in the future, which I think is probably one of the biggest. I just got his attention. It's one of the things that I'd like to see if we could be able to add something like that. So, if you do want to sleep, you could schedule your actions for the 4 a.m. session and for the 7 a.m. session, and then you could actually wake up normally. I think that's probably right now. I don't know how realistic that is to get back up and running. I know it's one of the things that I know the community would be very happy with is if we got that tool back up and running. Or if we even add that functionality to the game where you could schedule your recruiting sessions out even one session in advance, I think would help a bunch because you're then talking about you can go almost 9 hours without looking at it and not miss a session. So especially those first day sessions. And that's one of the things I'm learning about recruiting myself is that those first couple sessions are vitally important. And I don't think even I've realized that until recently how if you can lay your claim early, you end up in a lot better spot later on in recruiting as well. So,
I find that to be the case. I don't know. I'm sure most people do it the same way I do, but instead of doing 8 separate sessions, try to do it in 4 and just sit there half an hour either side of the hour.
Exactly.
And churn through.
Yes.
I mean, I've played maybe a dozen seasons so far, so I'm still learning. I've just got to D1A in one of my worlds for the first time, so I'm just
you have more seasons than me, so I mean kudos to you, man.
I do the same thing, Caddy. I call that bridge recruiting, where you bridge one cycle into the next, and you can see the results of your previous action from many hours ago. You complete the ones for the upcoming action, and you've got 6 hours of rest that way. I bridge that as well. Have you got any more questions for Adam?
No, not off the top of my head. I'm just, I played maybe in 2011 or 12 for the first time, and I kind of really I just completely fell off at D3, and then I don't know. Last year I gave it another crack and stuck with it. So I'm really glad to see the changes that you outlined before about climbing quicker, because it's demoralizing seeing I've studied in America, so I've been there before, and I had this school I really wanted. It was just a low D1 school, but I was like, man, I'm gonna get this school, and then by the time I get there, they're gone, and it's 8 seasons or 9 seasons. It's just
it's like that. It's like that across a lot of the games where it's it almost was it's supposed to be a journey, and I think that when they first rolled the games out a while back, it made a lot more sense because the worlds were more full, so it's almost like a training grounds to get where you wanted to be and to kind of prove yourself. But when the games aren't as full, and also I think that the way gaming shifted in the last the way gaming shifted in the last, probably like, 10 to 15 years, like the more immediate gratification is needed. And I'm not saying that, to take shortcuts, but I'm just saying like, giving people the able to make choices and, let them start a little closer to where they want to start. Like maybe not give them the best schools, maybe not give them Ohio State and Alabama out the gate, but, maybe give them, give you the ability to start in Division I AA, maybe give you the ability to start in Division II. I would love to let people start in Division II because I know some people are not fans of the reduced game planning. So I know that as well. So I was hoping to solve that problem, but it wasn't as easy of a problem to solve off the rip either.
Yeah, well, it sounds great, and I'm glad there's people on, and to give the new players like me a chance to sort of climb, because I'm still, coming up against players and getting dumpstered, and it's just.
Well, if you find me, schedule me, and I'll play, and you can beat me, and you'll feel better about yourself. So,
ditto.
Thank you so much.
Hey, appreciate you. We're going to put you back in the guest room. If you have any questions, you think of something, just leave me a message there on the chat. And what we're going to do now is turn it over to Adam to tell us a little bit about where this is going now that you've actually had your hands in the engine, so to speak. Wipe the oil off of those hands and tell us what you see and where you figure we're going to go.
Yeah, so I guess I've alluded to this a couple of times, but I do want to formally tell everyone that now that Chris and I have gotten our feet wet and that we've been starting all of this, we've actually started the foundational and beginning works on rewriting Gridiron. So this would be Gridiron, I think, what would this be, 4.0? I wouldn't say that we've married any ideas or anything like that, but what we're starting to do is lay a framework on the database side of things and some of the APIs to enable this game to be played on desktop and mobile concurrently, and also clean up a lot of the database stuff that is causing us shortcomings in the game. So what that kind of means for you guys is that we're shooting in when I talk about the 80-20 split, it means that that 80% that we're shooting for is going towards a Gridiron rewrite. So kind of that leaves us in the position of sourcing ideas, trying to figure out when we're going to start, actually designing the meat and bones of it. It means that we're going to be going into the sim engine and adjusting, rewriting the sim engine. Like all of the game is going to get updated into, we're going to 2020ize the game. So this game, it's, the sim engine's probably as old as is the same sim engine that you guys have had for some time. That's, been, tweaked probably over time. It's going to be rewritten in all, new code. And so, this does come with some risks. It does come with some changes. And it's going to be a delicate balance for us to maintain the spirit of Gridiron, but also add things into it that, make the game more fun and make the game more approachable and modernize the game. So, that comes with, and it's some of the stuff that we had to meet on. We had to talk to our compliance people around like, how do we license this game to make sure that we can, do this and realign the divisions. One of the things that played in our favor was that like our worlds really aren't indicative of the real world. So the NCAA can't point to us and say like, hey, they're copying us. So these are the things I had to explore before I could really formally announce this and make sure that we did our due diligence to make sure that we could create a game for you guys that was realistic and also still fun. So that was kind of the big announcement. There isn't a whole ton of like work done that I can like show you because a lot of it is just back end stuff that Chris is doing around like use cases and how we attach databases and investigative work around how it kind of works right now. I think the goal really is that we're going to be moving the whole entire site over to a new platform so that even like the forums and the core site of What If Sports lives somewhere else too. It's just that Gridiron is going to be the first game that really kind of does that. And when I talk about mobile, I mean like on your mobile phone, it will fit your screen. And also we're talking about actually having an application too. What that functionality comes with the application, we're not 100% sure. It could be as, but that involves, things like being able to do push notifications for like when recruiting, when your recruiting session passes. So like if you're, if we go to like, let's just say like 6-hour recruiting sessions, you could be able to set push notifications to notify you when recruiting processes so you can go check your next session, or to remind you, hey, 15 minutes for the next session, like to go do your bulk recruiting. So it gives us the ability to make the game more approachable for new players, but also if you want to play on desktop, it's still going to be able to play on a web-based platform. So that's kind of the big news for us, is that's the first game we're going to completely rewrite. And I think that's, what I'm really, really excited about. I think that with college football being what it is and football being what it is, like that there's so much market growth to get this game back to, 70, 80% full in worlds. And, our plan really isn't to, I guess, retire the 3.0 worlds or the 3.1 worlds because of realignment and all that stuff. Like, because I don't think it'd be fair to move D1 schools up into Division 1A. I think it would honestly, you're talking about fresh new worlds. So there's a lot more stuff that comes with this that as we kind of get more stuff developed and more stuff designed that we can share and talk about. But right now, a lot of them are just, ideas. And definitely we'll be talking to you guys about sourcing some stuff and things if you think will be fun, because ultimately, like, you guys, I think the game planning aspect of it in terms of like how you do it, like, is incredible. I think you talk about other games and like, I just read Holly's comment. I think it's one of those things like the game planning aspect of Gridiron is so cool in the sense that, like, you're not necessarily like the other sim games that you see, you're like calling plays in the field. We don't necessarily have that luxury because, like, you get really, really deep in the woods and you start talking about, like, physically calling plays for every single game. You start talking about almost like getting into like Madden territory at that point. And we're not that game where, you set your game plan and, at halftime you're able to adjust it. So I still love that aspect of the game. So that's the really exciting news that we have. And we want to just formally let you guys know from the Gridiron community that we are starting to rewrite your game, and you guys are the first ones to get a rewrite. So any chance player names will be added? Tired of seeing the same ones over and over. Definitely. You're talking about, like, when I talk about, making the game, 2020 eyes, like, you're talking about a, bigger database of names. You're talking about, probably this also goes back a little bit to like why I kind of took a shorter route to rewriting the job program for Gridiron was we're going to probably completely redo the job process. And I think the top schools are still going to come with advantages in terms of like prestiges and that kind of stuff. When you start talking about updated prestiges, like how Clemson's now an A+ school. But those top schools are going to come with accountability. And, one of the things we're talking about is like, what does that look like? And for me, it means that, like, I think the accountability has to be black and white. It can't be this subjective thing where, like, man, I don't know if I lose this bowl game, if I'm going to go from like safe to on the hot seat. It needs to be like, here are your requirements, and if you don't meet them, you're out. Because ultimately you guys are paying customers and expectations need to be set up front. So, like, a couple of things have been thrown out is like in the job process, say that you're a, not as experienced coach. Potentially you can make in recruiting, you can make promises and say, I promise to, make a BCS bowl in the, or make the college football playoff in Division 1A in the next, 4 years. And that can weigh heavily onto, or depending on how the school is evaluating, that can weigh heavily on whether you get the job or not. Then you have 4 years to make a top 4, BCS bowl, or, make to the college football playoff, which is going to put a lot of pressure on you to build that scope really quickly. But I think that's part of the fun of it, is that you're going to have some of those advantages, but you're also going to be kind of accountable to, do that. And so, like, it also might give people, like, how tough the world is. Like, you guys veteran coaches know how hard it is to make a top 4 spot, but you know how hard it is, and you might say, I can't make that promise. I can't promise that I'm going to make it to, a national title game in, 4 years. But you might also have like veteran coaches who are like, yeah, I can rebuild anywhere. I can do anything. And they make that promise and they get the job. So I just think that choices and accountability definitely make the games more fun, because I think you also see a rotating door at the top jobs a lot more, unless they really have figured it out, like, you know, the Nick Sabans of the world have in like real college football. So that's really all I had. I know I'm kind of rambling at this point. I don't know if Magic, you want to on?
You're doing fine, believe me. And you know, it is about the hour mark, and that's kind of where we try to draw the line on the show. So we'll go ahead and start wrapping it up. But again, I want to say thanks to Caddy and Holdaway for joining us tonight, or in his case, this afternoon, and chatting with us and presenting some questions. Definitely appreciate you coming on. I know the coaches really enjoy being able to put that face to a name and get that instantaneous feedback with having a question answered right here live by the man himself. So definitely encourage more folks to join us. We're going to try to do these shows about every 2 weeks. You and Chris may or may not be on in a particular time frame, but you know, you guys are more than welcome to come on anytime that you want to. This is your forum, your platform, and you've got carte blanche to come on and make things happen. We definitely appreciate you guys working as hard as you do, because I know you've said it before. You can't believe you're getting paid to do something you love to do and get to essentially play, but at the same time, it is work. So
I love What Is Sports, and you know, the more I learn about all the games, the more I like them. The last thing I'd like to say is really like I know that like I tend to be the person that's on the forums, and I tend to be like the mouth sometimes of What If Sports, but like really I'm absolutely nothing without Chris. Like you guys, I mean, he kind of sits a little bit more behind the scenes, but like I can't go in there and do the coding that he does. I can't, you know, fix the things and find out the issues as quickly as he does. And it's just one of those things that like, you know, it's awesome that we're a team, because like, you know, you talk about the last like three to 4 years, like I feel like, you know, we put out more changes probably in the last, you know, 30 days. Cause I mean, it was like December 18th, we put out changes, and then it was, you know, January 14th. And it's probably more changes than we've seen in, you know, probably a year. And it's not that the other group wasn't doing anything. It was just that they were, you know, I can see how Sable had no time to do anything, as he's doing like, I'm testing things. I'm handling customer support tickets. Like your time just gets sucked away. And it's one of those things that like, I'm hoping that, you know, as we kind of attack some of the operational stuff, that, you know, my burden gets a little less, because, you know, he's developing, but ultimately I'm having to do some, you know, during this football season too, the real Samantha and Shannon have been doing stuff for League Safe, because all the fantasy football leagues wrapped up. So it's one of those things where I'm hoping that they come back on and they can start handling a lot more of the customer support stuff, so that I can really get my head down and start designing, you know, what our Gridiron 4.0 looks like. And, you know, thank you guys for hopping on the show. I'm always glad to answer questions. You know, my opening post about always taking emails and responding to emails, I have an open door. It might take me a little bit of time to reply sometimes, but you'll always get a response from me. It just, you know, depends on how busy that particular day is. So I'm really grateful for this community. I'm really grateful how much people care. I know that, you know, sometimes caring comes out and people telling me that what I'm doing is wrong, but they wouldn't be telling me that I'm doing something wrong if they didn't actually care about me.
Exactly.
So, I'm definitely appreciative of any and honest feedback ever. I mean, not all of our changes and all of our things that we do are going to be home runs, and I know that too. We're gonna whiff on stuff too, you know. And so, like, if you guys don't like things that we're doing, or, you know, look at things and, you know, have different takes, like, come to me, tell me like what you think's wrong, what you think will fix it, or if you don't even know that you're going to fix it, just say, hey, I don't like it for these reasons, and try and explain it to me. I'm always all ears. I'm always glad to be proven wrong, because in a lot of these games, you guys know a lot more than I do on them. So I'm just trying to learn from you guys as fast as I can, and I'm grateful for everything you guys do for us, and, you know, how loyal customers you guys have been, you know, for all this time.
Well, we definitely appreciate you being here, not just on the show, but here for us. And in the
I like being on the show though too.
Yeah, well, we love having you on there, and we're going to go ahead and let you go finish that beer or top it off, and
yeah, I'm going to finish it.
Hopefully, it didn't get too warm.
No, it's all right. It still feels cold, so if not, I'll throw it back in the fridge for a little bit. But thanks for having me on again. You know, we'll try and do this, you know, regularly, and thank you again.
Oh, you're more than welcome. Appreciate you being on. Guys, thanks so much for tuning in, and join us again next time for another episode of This, That, and the Other. I've been your host, Majique. Y'all have a good evening.